I'd like to start actually by going around and just hearing from all of you, just very briefly, just 1 minute apiece. And if you could let me know, I'm going to put this into the chat for some just really easy prompts. But your name, where you're sitting in the world, what is your practice or Zen practice or non-Zen practice, if it isn't Zen, if any. What is the work you do in the world and why you're here, what you might like to get out of this, okay? So I'll go ahead and go first. My name is Paul Gyodo, and I'm transmitted in the White Plum lineage through my teacher, Shishin Roshi, who's here today. I sit in Boulder, Colorado, where at least one other of you are sitting, I know that. My practice is Zen, and I have a daily practice leading the Eon Zen Sangha in our White Plum lineage tradition, which, as most of you probably know, is also the lineage of Bernie Glassman, founder of the Zen Peacemakers. The work I do is right now it's bringing the Dharma to my students through the Eon Zen Center and to the professional community through my Zen at Work programs and practices. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today. And I do that in a number of forms. And why am I here is to do just that and share some teachings and practices with you that I hope will be helpful. Okay, so that's me. We'll go around, and probably is most efficient for me to just name people across the grid. So we'll just move through. So I think Hoden already introduced himself, so I'll go to Daniel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Daniel Hale. I am in I'm at work, so I'm in Charleston, West Virginia. Let me look at the chat again. My practice, I normally study Theravada type stuff, but I live in a place where there are no real, like, you really can't learn anything other than, podcasts and YouTube and things like that, because there's no one to teach you around here. So I read a lot of books, and I read a book called Hell's Gate by Claude Anshin Thomas, which led me to the Bernie Glassman thing. And then I joined the Zen Peacemakers about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. And then, so basically that's it. I work for a nonprofit that oversees recovery housing. There's a affiliate in each state, and I work for the West Virginia affiliate. Basically, we make sure that people don't get preyed upon by people trying to make money in recovery housing, and make sure that they get treated right, that kind of thing. Why here? I don't know. I just kind of wanted to be here and learn. And that's it.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you for your presence, Daniel, and thank you for that good work you're doing in the world. Martine?
Okay, so my name is Martine Palmater, and Martine Takai Palmater. I'm a teacher at the One Heart Sangha in Silver Spring, Maryland on the East Coast. I became a transmitted teacher in fall of 2019, so I'm relatively new. But I come from the lineage line of Roshi, Robert Kennedy through Bernie Glassman. And we have an interfaith Sangha. And I practice Zen for many years. And my work in the world is I do lead our Sangha. I have a co-guiding teacher. We lead together, and that's been a real interesting work. And we do workshops, and I am currently, I'm retiring in a month. That's why I'm here. I'm a human resources manager in the federal government, and I handle harassment cases and conflict prevention. So I'm in the world of dealing with a lot of people and their problems, and teaching my own team to how to handle things. And I definitely use my perspective that I've learned in practice. And I am here because I am shifting into another kind of work, and I have a strong interest in racial justice issues and multiple issues, homelessness. And I haven't found a place yet where I'm going to plant myself, but I'm very interested in hearing what people have to say about my next transition. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for your presence and your work. Jonan, Amy?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Amy, or Jonan, as Gyodo said. I did my Jukai with Gyodo, and I do practice with the Eon Zen Center. I'm currently in Berkeley, California. I moved here from Colorado just a few months ago. And I continue to have a Zen practice daily, as well as with Eon Zen. And I'm also an Episcopalian. That's what brought me out to Berkeley. I am in seminary currently, about halfway through my seminary studies to be an Episcopal priest. So that is my work. I do work in a church right now, although previously my work was in the hospitality and craft beer industry, and I really found my contemplative practices, both with Zen and my contemplative prayer practice, to be an essential part of how I did my work. And so I'm here to learn a little bit more about deepening that relationship between my practice and my work. I think it's a pretty necessary part for my own well-being in my work.
Great, thank you. It looks like I patched out for a moment. Naomi?
Hi, I'm Naomi. I am in San Francisco at the moment, although it might not sound like it because of my accent. I have a bit of a mix and match practice, having moved to San Francisco, and I work at an organization called Zen Caregiving Project, which brings a sort of mindfulness-based, compassionate approach to caregiving. I've landed in the world of Zen, so have been looking into that as well, but I would say I find many different practices. And yeah, my work is a tiny nonprofit. We're working with Gyodo at the moment, and it's very interesting to see how practice interweaves in our work in the context of Zen Caregiving Project. And I guess I'm just curious to pull out the wider themes or the wider practices and maybe articulate them. Like maybe I'm just doing it with my work now because we sit down and we have a meditation practice at the beginning of each week, and our ED is also a teacher. So how would I take these practices outside of a very Zen context and work within a much more commercial context whilst keeping hold of the sort of core teachings? So that's why I'm here.
Good, great. Thanks for being here, Naomi. Shishin Roshi.
Hi, I'm Shishin, and I'm in Berthoud, Colorado, a small rural community outside Boulder, and we have a Zen center here. We call it we call the facility Maitreya Abbey, and I run the Great Mountain Zen Center. And I've been retired for about 15 years, but before that I worked in the high-tech industries as a software engineer, and I've done a wide range of things. But I've studied together with Gyodo Sensei for I don't know how long, more than 20 years, and so 25 years. So I'm just here to see what he's up to.
Thank you, Shishin Roshi, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Mylene.
Hello, everyone. My name is Milan. I am in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm a new student to a Sangha in Boulder, Boundless in Motion. And it's I'm new to it, but it's focused on environmental, social, and racial justice, which is one of the main reasons why I chose this Sangha. I was invited to it, and my work, my daily work is I'm a freelance translator. I've been translating for large corporations as a freelancer for many years, and I'm getting to a point where it's no longer satisfying to work for large corporations, and I'm trying to find my place in it, in like, or find the heart in it, or else switch to something else. And what is it? And I'm parallel to that, I'm also doing racial justice work, and I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years, and I have come to realize that putting heart and soul in it is extremely important. And so that's why I'm trying to deepen my practice as well, and that's why I'm here. Thank you
Wonderful.
for having this.
Thanks for being here. Mylène, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, I'm French, so that's.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
No, do not worry about it. I'm used to it, and I respond to everything.
Okay, very good. And I believe that's Kriti Kanko's Sangha,
Yes.
is that right? Okay, very good. Yes, I know Kriti. And Ralph.
Good morning. So, yep, I'm Ralph Burns. I'm sitting in my home office in the foothills a few miles above Boulder in the sticks. I've been sitting some with the Aeon Zen Sangha in Boulder. My meditation practice has been on and off, and started years ago with the El Dorado Ashram, south of town. I've worked the last 20 plus years as a freelance mechanical design engineer. I previously worked for engineering companies that were many of me in one place, and then I struck out to be independent. This kind of fit my style, and had more risk and potential both together. I found my work to be pretty satisfying. It's a self-created job, and I've steered away from the work that I haven't wanted to do and do the work that I have wanted to do. And my strength has been creativity, although as the years go by, I find that I'm just kind of coasting to the end. You know, I can't retire yet. I've got more years to go. And I'm kind of been in a comfortable place where I'm not stepping into any discomfort by taking on new things, even though each project is stressful. I think I prefer to stretch myself in non-work areas instead. And I've been pretty happy with my work. In the past, I had built medical devices that you could say are life-saving if they're not misused. But like one great one was rid the blood bank system of HIV about a dozen or 15 years ago. And these days I work on what you could loosely call minesweepers for the State Department and the Marines. And you could think of those as things that can easily be misused in the world. And I'm here because I love Gyodo Dharma's talks. So here we go.
Thank you, Ralph. Thanks for being here, and thanks for that nice segue. It's encouraging. Great. Well, I really appreciate everybody sharing, and that was really helpful to me to hear where you're coming from. A few things I want to echo back, as I feel that my work is responsive to. It's being in a transition out of one job into another one, that you want to find something that is more heartful work, or find the heart in the work you're doing, as Mylène put it. finding a way to infuse your work with the spirit and the practice of Zen that's perhaps a little bit more extensive and informed than just meditating at the beginning of each day, but really bringing the principles and the practice into the day to day, and that's what I hope to help with. So the the structure of the session, as I'd like to move into it, is I'll say just a few introductory words on this matter of, you know, how Zen practice applies, you know, to work beyond just meditating in the morning, if you will, as I see it and as I've experienced it. And then I've got four different little practice principle segments to bring forth. And so if we spend about 10 or 15 minutes on each one of those, then there's several different flavors that I hope to bring out there. And then there should be some time at the end for some Q&A. And I think there'll be some Q&A in the middle too, so I'm not just, you know, rambling for an hour. Okay, so how does that sound? Good. All right. Okay. So, you know, one thing that is just very true is that professional life, particularly in this modern world, is very difficult. You know, it's much more complicated than the types of functional roles or professional, that's not even the right word, roles that we get from the Zen tradition that we learn. You know, the gardeners, the cooks, the monks, the practitioners and the masters from the old days. You know, have a certain model of functioning, but the way we're working in the world is so much more sophisticated than that, and so much more challenging than that. And particularly with those of us who are drawn to socially conscious work, and everybody on this call is, it's especially hard. Entrepreneurial work is hard. Socially conscious work is hard. Mission-driven work is hard. It really challenges us to step up into a form of functioning that isn't always fully supported, you know, by our culture, and also is subject to a lot of strains and stressors which are imposed on us by the capitalist system. And so it's a great, the larger we're called into service, the more difficult it is because of the nature of the world, really, but also because of the nature of our professional culture in this environment, in this country. So I really want to meet that, you know, meet that condition with the Zen practices and principles, and I think they meet them very, very clearly. There's this term that's come out in leadership circles in recent years, which is called VUCA. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So those of us in really high functioning and high leadership positions are faced with VUCA every day: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's a very challenging environment to be in. But there's a way that we are very much drawn to working with those conditions that tend to make them worse. All right. And those of us who are longtime Zen practitioners are smiling because you understand that this is basically the nature of dukkha. Right? It's to our response to instability, our response to perceived insufficiency, our response to lack of control is what the Buddha identified as being the source of our problems, the source of our suffering, right? As he put it, you know, all of these problems that you think you have, he can't help with all of those problems. He can help with the 86th problem, which is that you think that all of those are problems that you need to fix, right? So when we succumb to this mind of, I need things to be less volatile, I need things to be less uncertain, I need things to be more in my control, I need to find resource where I am perceiving lack of resource, that itself is a fundamental source of discord within your own professional functioning. And that's something that Zen can really help us with. So what I've been inspired by in this work and bringing the Zen spirit to professional life is the spirit of Samu, which is work practice, right? Those of you who've been practiced Zen for a while, not all of you have, but Samu is a word, Japanese word that refers to formal work practice. It's what we do in retreats. It's what monastics do in residence in monasteries. And it's all the work that's done in the context of a retreat or in the context of a Zen center or monastery life is done with a very high degree of meditative awareness and a very high attitude of service. Okay, I'm just going to sum it up that way. Now it's simpler. The work that we do in retreat and in a monastery tends to be simpler. It isn't subject to a lot of the VUCA forces that are present out in culture. You know, till the garden, work on the website, work in the kitchen. Doesn't have those factors to it. But nevertheless, it's these qualities of concentrated attention, samadhi, understood in our Zen context, and very strong intention, which comes from a spirit of service, which of course informs everything that we do in Samu, in work practice. These are the two things that I think we can bring to our professional life and can really help with these difficult conditions, you know, that we're facing. It also applies to the kind of job transition, you know, factors that some of you have named, you know, moving into a new job. So we can look at, so where's the place where I can serve most fully, and where the place where I'm really drawn to be most strongly attentive. Okay, so I want to move into the first kind of practice module, if you will. Module is too strong a word. So this matter of resource lack is something that faces all of us in our professional life. And it's typically money or control that are the things that we have a discordant drive within ourselves in order to want more of than we have. Okay. Now, many of you may be thinking, well, it's time actually that I want the most of. And that's true. I see some smiles there, so that probably resonates. And I'm that way too. I need more time. I need more time. Okay. But of course we know you can't, it's about quality of time, not quantity of time, ultimately. So I think that what's going on with a lot of our time deficit drives or feelings is really a lack of control, that we're drawn towards control, right? So at least for this one, I'm going to work with this deficit as a time deficit, or I'm sorry, a money deficit or a material resource deficit or a control deficit. Of course, I'm going to say a perceived material resource deficit and a perceived control deficit, right? So the practice from Zen that really deals with this is meditation from the hara. Okay, it's bringing attention to the hara. The hara is adjacent to the second chakra, the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is the generative chakra. It's the passion chakra. It's where everything is coming together with a kind of joyful, you know, just process of manifestation. And that's the chakra that holds our resourcing challenges, right? So you might notice it, that when you're feeling that, say, financial pressures, you feel it in that belly, you feel it in your belly. When you're feeling destabilized or out of control, you feel it in your belly, all right? So the exercise to work with this is to actually do just basic hara breathing activation in order to land in the grounded truth of what you do have present right now. Right? Where is your resourcing? You can even, and I've found this to be helpful with the people I work with, envision the material resourcing you do have. You can even envision the money that you have in the bank, the amount of financial resources your business has, what is present, not what isn't present, right? And of course, this goes for control too. When you land in your body, in your hara, you're reestablishing yourself in the ground of your body. Okay, so a very simple kind of pointer on this one. And now I'd like to just practice it for 3 minutes. I'll go ahead and time and ring and just invite everyone into a very brief hara meditation where you bring the attention down to the hara, which is, for those of you who might not be practiced in this, a point about 1.5 inches below your navel, and it's about 1.5 inches in from your skin. And as you deepen into a relaxed breathing rhythm, just allow your attention to go to that spot and remain there. Okay, we'll do 3 minutes. Okay, now we'll bring our attention back to the visual and the verbal. And I'd like to just invite perhaps 2 people to share anything in the way of your experience, or perhaps any questions you might have about that exercise. Ralph, was that a, yeah?
Sure, I'll take a stab. Well, in that core, I felt a strength, a strength that it's carried me through time, through different adversities, and where things never go as you wish, that I have a core drive that does me well, thrives, gets me through it, and puts me in a place where I've been proud of how I've been.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Martine, did I see you?
Yeah, I felt a sense of real solidity and also darkness, like being in a dark, comforting place, but really not knowing, like a place of extreme not knowing.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly. Right. So just name, the confidence that gets cultivated. Ralph pointed to that continuity of your own power and sourcing, which becomes newly available to you. And then to be Martine, you're like an advanced practitioner because you're actually grounding in the unknown, which is the most difficult thing to ground in, but by able to actually grounding in the true nature of reality, which is the unknowable, you actually have a very deep grounding in that way. So great. Was there anybody else who had a brief share or question? No? Okay. Right. So moving on to the second exercise principle. There's a condition that all of us face, all of us face in modern professional life, which is this aspect of wearing many hats, right? Shifting from role to role. How many are familiar with this? Okay. How many are afflicted by it? Yeah. So it's very common, and it's a very difficult challenge in our professional life, and it kind of is isomorphic, if you will, with multitasking, right? So at a kind of a moment by moment, day to day, or task to task basis, we have this thing that we call multitasking, where we find ourselves shifting literally moment by moment between multiple tasks, right? And it's been proven psychologically that multitasking I'm going to qualify it in a few moments, but multitasking mostly doesn't work because the context shift cost that you incur by shifting between those things subverts all of the momentum and the depth that you're establishing with any given task. So you end up really not, while you kind of have the illusion that you're doing multiple things at the same time, and to a certain extent you may be advancing them. In terms of the depth and quality of your work, you're not really serving the task or yourself, right? And then the multi-rolling, I call it, kind of is subject to that same sort of thing. You want to maintain the ability to do many things at once or as quickly as possible in quick succession. But there's context shifting costs associated with that if you don't bring the right mind to it, right? And there is a quality of mind that you can bring to multitasking and multi-rolling that actually does make it very feasible. And I'll just kind of clue you into what that mind is by asking this question: what role in the world is really good at multitasking? And I don't mean a professional role, Martine.
Being a parent.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, my daughter of a new baby, she's really learning it now.
Exactly. It's being a parent. And it speaks to parental mind, which I'll get to in a moment. But yeah, it's parental mind, which cares so much about the well-being of the environment and of the work they're doing, that the multitasking becomes infused with a continuous spirit that is not afflicted by the shift. Okay. So there's a story that I read, and I haven't been able to track down the source of this anecdote, but it was a contemporary Zen master. For some reason, I'm thinking it was San Sunim, Korean Zen master. And he was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a newspaper and eating breakfast at the same time. And his jisha, his attendant, came up to him, and he noticed him doing this, and he thought he caught him out. And he said, Roshi, what are you doing? You always tell us to do one thing at a time, and you're doing two things. You're eating and reading the newspaper at the same time. What's up with that? And Roshi said, oh no, I'm not doing two things. I'm doing one thing. And the student goes, what do you mean? He says, I'm eating and reading the newspaper. So see, for him, it was one thing that included those two activities. For the student who hadn't developed, that mind, that concentrated being within samadhi continuously, a certain level of samadhi, it was two things. And this is the case with multi-rolling, okay? If you have this gap between I'm doing this and now this other thing is another thing, that mind, then you're going to be thinking about the other thing. There's a division within yourself where you're thinking about the other thing while you're doing this thing, okay? But if it's all one, then you move between them seamlessly. So how to make them all one? Well, we know, those of us who practice, that it's not about thinking about the other thing. It's about completely surrendering yourself to what you're doing, right? Trusting that when the time comes for you to put that second hat on, then you can put that second hat on and leave behind the previous task completely, right? So that's the first secret of multitasking and multi-rolling, is to completely do your task without a thought of any other task. And then when you're done, leave it behind completely and move in to the next one, right? The second secret is what I touched on before, which is parental mind, right? It's to cultivate this quality in Dogen, in the Tenzo Kyokun, the instructions to the cook, which is really the best text about the spirit of work practice. Really wonderful. He identifies three minds that we bring to work. It's a big mind, magnanimous mind, joyful mind, and then parental mind is the third one. And this quality is what I found to be very helpful, very, very helpful in our modern world with so much multi-rolling and multitasking. And what does that mean? It means, to me, it means being fully connected to your love of service, fully connected to what you want to bring forth in the world, to why you're doing what you're doing from a standpoint of service and nurturance. Okay. So that attitude of service is key. I don't have an exercise for this one. I just want to introduce those two key principles in terms of working with multitasking and multi-rolling. So I think I'm going to take a breath here and see if there's any comments or questions about that. Hoden.
I find most of my life I've been in a profession of being a musician. And I find even today, I spend a lot of time practicing. I go through periods where it's very intense. I cannot get music out of my head throughout the rest of the day. It's not something I can leave behind. It's almost there's so much momentum. And now working with ZPI and building website kind of functionality, I find the same thing, where it just runs through my mind very quickly. So I know working with Zazen is one way of constantly letting go, letting go, letting go. But it's very nurturing. There's a lot of fertile things that happen just as it's running through the background.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to let it go.
Yeah. So I moved to ask, is there a problem?
Well, I can't sleep at night.
Yeah, my experience with that is when you are very creative, or for those of us who are very creative in our work, sometimes that's a part of it. Yeah. I mean, I'm up for hours frequently at night, writing things down or practicing, Zazen. And it's usually not some kind of anxiety or worry. It's more creativity that's coming. So I've accepted that as part of my life, and it can be hard at times, but I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
Shishin Roshi.
One thing I was thinking about is parental mind, having raised a number of kids, is that when they need attention, they need attention. And sometimes have to put other things aside. And I've worked in various capacities. And what I've found, and even running a Zen center, is that it's a lot easier to attend to a task right when it comes up, like answering an email, rather than putting it aside. It might take 1 minute or less to take care of a task that presents itself like a crying child, rather than putting it aside and then either forgetting about it or having it in the back of your mind so that it interferes with what you're doing at present. So that's the one thing that I've found that works best, is just try to clear my desk right when it's important, right? In a timely fashion. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks so much for that, Shishin Roshi. And of course, I saw you do that countless times over the years that we've been together. And you might have seen me taking a note down here to not forget passing that along. That's so powerful. Yeah. Anyone else with a share question? Naomi?
I guess what I take from parental mind is also an element of compassion, because what I struggle with is I've always worked in nonprofits. You're so fully connected to the love of what you do that to see it not being done well, or to see things going wrong, which mean the impact that you could have is less, or people will not receive what you could be giving because team inefficiencies, or people haven't thought about something, or you've done something wrong. And sort of that's the struggle with working in a nonprofit, is you really are impacting people with the work you do or not. And I guess parental mind is sort of bringing an element of understanding and compassion and love for those around you who are also doing this work with you, or the process, and being like, nobody's perfect. So you've got to show love to your internal and the people who will eventually be impacted by your work. So
yeah, I think that's right on, Naomi. There's that quality of, you can never be a perfect parent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that goes along with parental mind, definitely. Yeah. So anyone else with a share question on this one? Okay. Very good. Looks like, oh, did you have something, Ralph?
It doesn't follow quite with the parental mind, but what it brought up for me is my work for much of my work has relied on being creative, being able to take some idea and turn it upside down and inside out, and looking at it backwards, and then seeing through a success from seeing a bunch of silly dead paths. And what requires that kind of creativity is absorption.
Yeah.
And a couple things kind of came into that, which fail me as I'm in my 50s.
Mm.
And that's sometimes I have to get behind against a deadline and with a bunch of distractions. And then when the deadline is nearer, put in some late night hours. And that works with one other thing. But with those late night hours, the rest of the world is asleep. And there is music in the background, but it has to be the right kind of nonverbal music. And the hours zip by, and this other kind of reach comes out with a personality, and the creative solution can fall into place. And that's the good hours, the 2 a.m.
Mm.
And I could do that when I didn't have to sleep so much,
Mhm.
right? Or whatever. Now I'm 55 and it's not so great. And so then without that special window, it's almost like a very, isolated window of just no distractions. I could be really absorptive. And then the other part about it is I used to dream the solutions. In particular, one solution I remember escaped several people for 6 months.
Mm.
And I woke up and I'm like, I got it. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. And then I went to work for 36 hours and did it.
Uh-huh.
And it still lives on today.
Yep. Okay.
But those things came at a cost because everything else, so the crying child would have been ignored.
Mm.
Everything else in my life was disproportionately ignored to really be absorbed in that part.
Yeah. Well, you could term it cost, or you can term it, there's an interdependent energy exchange going on constantly. And we're subject to those flows. With the key being, which is what you talked on right here, the quality of our attention or our concentration, absorption, and the quality of our intention. And that's what I spoke about at the beginning. The spirit of Samu that really carries through all of these things is establishing a certain quality of absorption and a certain quality of intention. So I would acknowledge, what you're saying about the cost, and then say, exactly right. So that gets included in, your full functioning and your full work in the world, is to take that into account. Yeah, but we can always bring the absorption, the quality of attention to everything we do. Yeah, no matter what it is. Shishin Roshi.
I just wanted to acknowledge what Ralph was saying, because I've had plenty of experiences like that. Started out my professional career as a physicist. I have a PhD in physics, and trying to solve problems, you think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it. And then when you're not thinking about it, the solution comes up. And there's many examples of that in the history of science. I mean, of people finding solutions in dreams and images and so forth. And Zen practice is a lot like that too, particularly the study of koans. Is they're not approachable with a rational mind, but you have to think about it. And then when you think about it and get the context, and then you stop thinking about it and just let the wisdom of your body come forward, it gives you the solution. And I think that as a parent, you have to rely on that too. So it's not just that you're ignoring everything else, but even when you think it's not working, it's working, because there is a wisdom that's not conscious.
Mm. Thank you, Rishi, for bringing that out. And yeah, what you were talking about, Ralph, was very, very profound in terms of the quality of absorption, that does yield those insights, and how that needs to be held within, the whole context. It isn't easy. It isn't easy, really. Martine?
I was going to say, I heard when Ralph was talking and when Shishin was talking, about confidence, and faith, it's almost like we have to know that we have this wisdom. It might not be accessible. Like sometimes I will wake up from sleeping or in the middle of the night, or something will just come up. But to make it intentional, to have the confidence that it's going, it will come when it's ready, versus struggling with it. I think it's been a good practice for me too. Don't fight that wisdom, just patience, confidence. So
Yes, very good. Thank you, Martine. Yeah, so this is a nice segue into the third segment that I'd like to explore, which is using koan or koan practice as a very practical way to address worrisome questions in our lives. So some of us have studied koans and are studying koans. I'm not going to get esoteric. I'd like to call koans in this somatic questioning. So it's doing what Shishin Roshi and Martine were just talking about, which is to really address questions very directly and specifically from your body and really explore what's going on with them. And I've done this work, this kind of way of working with koans with executives, around the country over the last 2 years. And there have been some profound kind of aha moments that they've come up with after like a 5-minute, working with it in this way on very practical questions, such as, should I take this job? Or what's the next job I should take? Or should I fire my CFO? Or, how do I deal with this budget issue I have? Very, very practical questions like that. So I'd like to go ahead and do a little bit of this with you. And the first thing to do is to identify a very specific question that you may have in your life. Okay, this isn't just base low-level anxiety. It isn't base low-level stress, which are two separate things. I'm going to call this a worry. Okay, a specific question you have that's niggling at you, and you're really looking for the answer. Okay, so the first thing to kind of recognize is like I like to say there are no answers to questions, there's only responses. So the first thing we're going to do is to change our relationship to the question and not look for an answer. We're going to actually use the question as a way of moving us forward to see what type of response in our work in the world this question is inviting us to make. All right. This goes back to the beginning. If we have a problem-seeking mind that we're applying to our world, we're going to be in trouble right from the get-go. So let's take that problem, as that question rather, as an opportunity to explore something that's really important to us. Okay. So I'll invite each of you to see if there's something there. Some of you actually articulated that you have clear and present questions about your work or your career. So you've got one. And then others, if you can bring one up. And then what we're going to do is just in a meditative mind, we're going to bring the question alive within our own internal voice. And that means repeating the question internally over and over. Okay, and I'll invite you to slow down the way you speak it inside. Should I take this job? Should I take this job? Okay, even to the point of it's now subverbal. It's just held in intention. Okay, and then bring your attention to your body, to your belly. Notice energy that may be moving also through your head, through your throat, through your chest, through your solar plexus. We have chakras there that get activated for certain questions, our power center, our expression, our view. So I'm not saying to just exclusively focus on your belly, but at least to pull us out of our conceptual ideating mind, problem-seeking mind, bring it down to the belly, and then open up the question in full body awareness and just see what happens. And I'm going to give a little bit of a prompt a framing of what are the potential things that might happen. So you might have a very clear response emerge to the question. Should I take this job? Yeah, it feels right. Yeah. Okay, a clear response. It could be that the question shifts. It turns into something else. You realize that the way you've articulated the question doesn't really get at the heart of the issue, and your consciousness deepens into a lower level, and you're like, oh, this is the real issue. This is the question. And then shift your question inside and hold that new question in your meditative awareness. Okay. And the third thing that might happen is that you come up with a very firm, I don't know, I can't know. Simply in this moment, I do not know what the right thing to do or say is. And be in that. Allow yourself to be in that not knowing and just see how it feels and what might emerge from that. Okay, so everyone can turn your awareness to your own question, and we will sit for, let's see, we'll just do 3 minutes with this. Okay, we can come back to the visual and the verbal. So that was not a lot of time, but I'm hopeful that some of you might have had some insight. It's fun to hear if there were some ahas that might have arisen. Like I said, I've done this with executives and downtown New York skyscrapers, and they're like, oh yeah, I really need to fire that guy after 5 minutes of doing that. So it can actually be very powerful. But did anyone have any insights there? Okay, no insights. What were your experience? Ralph?
My insight to my question was, so I had a question and it could lead in different ways. And in each of the way, there's a road bump, some kind of obstacle. And realize those obstacles are really pretty small.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. Anyone else? Milen?
I guess for me, this is a struggle with my work. My work is very much deadline based and always in a rush, and short assignments. And I'm lacking the human connections in my work, being a freelancer. And I've been doing that for 25 years, and I'm really, really feeling it in my body. The stress of having too much work, not having enough work, wondering when the next work is going to come.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the point in my career where I'm good at it. I'm a good, I know what to do and I have knowledge, but I'm at the point where I'm not sure this is the right job for me. And so my question was, should I stay in this work? And the next question that came, it was like, no, get out, be with people. And it was pretty clear. But then the next question that is a lot more difficult to answer is, what do I do next? And so for what it's worth, this is what I experienced. And it seems like it's been with me for several years. So
perfect. Wonderful, Milen. That's such a great sharing. And I work with a lot of people in one-on-one work who are in very similar positions. And so having gotten to that no, right, then the next question is, what do I want to be doing? And how do I find my way to that? And those are questions that then can be held over time, right? So that's another key thing to understand about this practice is that you can't jump to the solution. I was in a meeting with 3 of my clients who are part of an executive team. They're very successful serial entrepreneurs, and they're rolling out a chain of restaurants. And they were having this executive meeting, and they're like, okay, how do we scale this thing while maintaining our branding? And I could see them, they're jumping right to, okay, how do we fix it? They're providing answers. And right there I said, okay, let us recognize that this is a great question to hold in the corporate field, in the team field for weeks and months, right? Don't jump to an answer. And those questions, what am I going to do and how am I going to get there? You need to hold that in your personal field for weeks and months. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Anyone else? Daniel.
I had a hard time finding anything that really niggles at me.
Awesome.
But the closest I could think of, like what I do now, like there's something I'd like to transition it slowly and expand it outwards, I guess.
Okay.
And I kind of just sat with that, and that was neat. But I really couldn't find anything that niggles. Everything kind of feels pretty good now, I guess. But that was neat to sit with that, like, kind of like question of how to take this and turn it into something more what I want to do instead of what I already do, which is already awesome. And I don't know if I'm being coherent with my language, but
I think so. I think you're saying that you don't feel like you have any worrisome questions around what you're doing right now, but there might be a question around, do I want to do something else?
Yeah, well, I know I do eventually, and I told the people when I started, but basically, like it doesn't feel like an issue. It just feels
Mhm.
like something that'll eventually unfold when it happens. And
Yeah.
it kind of was nice to sit with, I don't know, maybe like uh, think of that issue without try to think of how to make it unfold.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just,
That's that's a koan that you can just carry through your days or weeks, and
yeah,
every once in a while check into it. Oh, do I want to do something else? Am I feeling moved
yeah,
to move on? And then you, by holding that question in the background, if you will, it doesn't need to be up here. Um, you aren't forced into the decision, which is what happens with most people, is when things fall apart, is they realize they need to move on, whereas you're going to move on from inspiration.
yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of felt also like Martine was saying about the cave, like a empty sort of like area that I was in while I thought that, or it just kind of resonated in there. That's all.
Yeah. Great. The fertile darkness, it sounds like. Great. Any other sharings around that, Martine?
So I'm planning to retire in a month and a half. I've been looking forward to this to do what I want to do and have some space actually before I go somewhere else. And my partner just opened up his second independent bike store. And I got a question this week. Can you work a couple hours and cover for me, and I can train you to, sell the bikes and so what came to me was, the question was, do I really want to work for Vic? And the word work for was interesting. And then I came to, do I really want to be in a bike store part-time or at all? And then, do I really want to be in a small space that has nothing to do with service and my dream? It just kept rolling. And I found it very useful to feel trepidation, and my body wasn't feeling like a solid answer right now, because I think I have this fear, like, what am I going to say, So, and it just came up the other day. So anyways, thank you for that exercise. I'm going to keep letting the questions roll till I get to the
Awesome.
wisdom.
What I really appreciate about the process you just shared, Martine, is that you started with this really charged question: do I want to work for Vic? Okay, there's ego stuff there, there's personality stuff, there's all sorts of story, meaningful, emotional, relational stuff that's kind of loaded in that, right? You went through that. You brought it to the qualities of absorption and attention and the quality of intention or service that is really at the heart of the work that you're doing. Do I want to be present in this small space for this amount of time? That's crucial, right? What the body somatic experience of your work is. And then, do I want to be in this job that isn't in service in the way that perhaps you want to be in? Those are the questions, right? Do I want to work for Vic? Gets tricky.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Right. So those, you can keep holding those, and those, the deeper you get, and then it's like, okay, like with Milen, the answers, may come very quickly. Okay. Any Shishin Roshi? I love these. I love the sharings on these. Shishin Roshi.
Yeah, so I think I'm talking too much, but I just read an article I think it was in the Washington Post, about a assistant pastor of a church whose working life was in a bicycle store. And during COVID, there was a big rush on bicycles, and there was somebody in his parish who needed a bicycle, and he had parts, and he knew how to put it together. And then he started teaching the kids in the parish how to repair bicycles. And then everybody in the neighborhood started giving him bicycles to repair, and he gave them away to kids who needed them. And it grew and grew, you know, and I just wanted to say that what came up for me when you were talking, Martine, is that anything could be a service job or a pursuit. I mean, we can find a way to serve others no matter what it is. And it just reminded me when you were talking about a bicycle shop that I had read this about a guy who was really very deeply engrossed in service through his work as a bicycle repairman.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Rishi. I'm curious about what his relationship to the bicycle shop was. Was he a cyclist himself? Was he sort of organically drawn to that work?
Yeah. I don't know how he originally got into it, but he had the skill, and he was he became a clergyman. He was a pastor, but he drew on that skill.
Okay. Okay.
One last comment, it'll take a minute on relation to that.
Yeah.
What I told Vic months ago is I would love when I retire to take new people on training rides on weekends to teach them how to ride, new beginner riders, and do safety. That's what I would love to do. And I got all excited. That's where my heart is, but being inside a bike shop with bikes. So thank you for that there is a way to serve and pay attention to my body.
Wonderful. Thanks, Martine. That was just a wonderful scenario and work. That last thing you said reminded me of an important part of koan work, which really does factor into this type of somatic questioning process, which is using your imagination. Right? We actually do need to use our imagination to envision into what something might feel like or look like, what that experience might be like, in order to really explore, the different options. So, okay. I want to just say a little bit about the fourth part that I had here, and then we'll have about 7 minutes or so for some open Q&A. This has been really rich. I'm enjoying this a lot. The fourth practice and principle is about motivation. So it's getting to this question of why you're doing what you're doing. And as I've been reinforcing through this time, I believe the most important things are the quality of your absorption and attention, and the quality of your intention and your aspirations for service. And this comes up for me, is crystallized for me in this famous story from the Zen tradition, which some of you know. It goes back to one of the teachers in the golden age of Zen named Hyakujo. That's his Japanese name. And he was the abbot of a monastery. He was in his 90s, about 90 years old, according to tradition, when he would continue to work out in the fields, which was the work of the monastery, every day under the sweltering sun, even at 90 years old. And his students, he had a large monastery, were concerned for his health doing this. So they hid his tools, thinking that he would just go off to his bedroom or something, do something safer without his tools. Well, he didn't go out into the field because he didn't have tools, but he also didn't eat the meal that day. And he didn't eat subsequent meals until his students came to him and said, well, what are you doing? And his reply was, a day without work is a day without food. Okay. A day without work is a day without food. So the main teaching here is not that you need to work to earn your keep. You got to pay your dues. There's a way to take this story in the wrong way. Yeah? It's like you got to earn it. You got to gut it out. It's not that at all. It's that I prefer to think of it as the work is the food. If he's not working in service, he's not a part of, the one body that Zen points us to is our true nature. And he's really bringing that out by affirming that, he's not going to eat. It's a profound teaching. Okay? So the work is the food itself. The second part of this story isn't talked about as much, but I find it to be actually even more powerful than the first part. After they give his tools back and he goes back to work, one of his senior students, who's actually Master Obaku, who those of you know the tradition have heard Master Obaku's name, comes to Hyakujo and he says, why do you insist on working? And Hyakujo responded, because there is someone who needs it. And Obaku pushes him further. He says, well, why don't you let that one do the work? And Hyakujo says, because that one has no tools or no hands. That one has no hands. And this just lands so deeply for me as the spirit that we bring to our work in Zen in terms of our motivation. It's that, what is it? Hyakujo is the hand. That one doesn't have hands. He's the hand, right? So my question to you who are, doing this inquiry for yourself is, what is the work in service that you are the hand for, that only you can do? Because you are the hand. That's the orientation that I like to bring up when inquiring into one's own inspiration and motivation, because it's really important to really be connected with one's own deepest inspiration to serve from your own life, not from an abstract notion of what society needs and what is the right thing to do, okay? It's what's the work in service that you are in your life, in your moment, most prepared, able, and inspired, desirous of doing. That's the question I put out there. So there's a lot that we can do there. And there's some real inquiry work we can do to look in and to ask yourself that question. And that can take some time and some process around that. But I'll just leave that one there. Okay. So we have 6 minutes. Oh, Shishin Roshi, please.
Yeah, thank you, Gyodo Sensei. When you were talking, it reminded me of something that Bernie Glassman wrote and talked about quite a bit. And as everybody might know, Bernie Glassman's a founder of the Zen Peacemakers, who's sponsoring this forum today. And preface it just by saying that each one of us has our own abilities, our own capacity, and it doesn't mean that one person is better than another, because in a garden, every flower and every plant contributes to the beauty of the flower according to whatever their nature is. But he said that take the ingredients of your life, which would be your skills, your talents, your abilities, whatever capacity you have, and make the best meal possible, and then offer that to others. So every meal won't be the same, but he's just encouraging everybody, no matter what you're doing, you can contribute, to the well-being of others. And I think that was in his book called Instructions to the Cook, actually. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Shishin Roshi. Yeah. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'd love to open it up just for general comments or questions. Jonan?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation, especially around these last two pieces. The question for me that I sat with, Martina, I liked kind of the way that you framed your experience with that, because my experience with my question was to go to another question and then to go to another question. And it really did feel like the initial question I thought I should sit with, in fact, was not quite the question that I needed to sit with. And instead, another question revealed itself, and then another question revealed itself. And so it felt not so much like I was getting to an answer as I was unveiling a truth of what question needed to be asked. And that was a really interesting process to kind of sit with. So I was glad when you mentioned that was your experience as well, of just a next question and a next question. And thank you very much for the Gyodo on this last part, the inspiration from your own life and looking at your own ingredients. I think that for me, in a position of transition into a new work, that really resonates as far as because my question was around looking forward to my new work and the ability to bring in that reflection of whatever space that takes. I will always have my personal ingredients that I bring to that, and the patience and confidence in that I think is really essential. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Jonan. Anyone else? Naomi?
This was going back to the absorption, and in a world where we get pings of emails, my inbox is continuously full, and each one is a crying child going, hey, help me, I need some answers, I need to do this, I need to do that. If I spent all my day answering emails, I would get to none of the concentrated work. And so what I really struggle with is how to find or carve out that time, and how to know when which email is a seriously crying child and which email is a moaning child who could just be asked to sit back for a while. And I don't think there's an answer to that, a universal answer, but it's just something I think I'm not the only one who struggles with.
Yeah, thank you for that, Naomi. A couple of comments on that. I think one aspect of that is kind of boundary setting, which you brought up there, is to kind of do your best to kind of frame moments where you can devote to certain tasks and not to others. But then the second thing is kind of the deeper thing, which Shishin Roshi's touched on earlier, which is you actually kind of develop an internalized sense of what the most important thing is, the same way a mother. I mean, my wife has 5 kids, 4 of whom are in the house right now, and I see her dropping one really important thing to move to another more important thing all the time. I mean, it's remarkable, and I'm a novice in doing that, but I think it speaks to the way that becomes an internalized sense of understanding the relative urgency of matters. Yeah. Okay. All right, still a couple more minutes. Any other sharings or questions? I'd love any feedback also on the session. Milen?
For one, thank you so much. This is I'm so glad I joined, so I really appreciate it. I guess I do have a question. Since I've been working with a lot of, multinational companies that are very capitalistic in their dealings, and as a translator, I'm part of the production phase, so I'm disposable, and the work is very much that way. But a larger question is, how can we be of service in a system that does harm in and of itself? That's really something that I'm asking myself. It's a bigger question of whether I want to stay in this work or not, but it's that is really maybe the foundation of my question is, how do I justify being in a system that does harm?
Yeah, that's a great and a big question, and I'll just try to answer really briefly from my perspective. Is there's a level. Goodbye, Naomi. I can see your note there. There's the level kind of that Shishin Roshi touched on earlier, which is you can be in service in some way almost no matter what you're doing. There's the story of the Zen butcher, right, who was a vegetarian, but he brought such artistry, care, and compassion to the job in his particular time and place. that was considered to be, you know, deeply in service. So there is that, but I also I think things are more they're different in the modern world because the systems are more complex, and the people who are working are more distant from the consequences of their work or the results of their work. And in my work with people, I invite them to be very conscious of what the ultimate functioning of their organizations is. If they're an arms merchant, for example, or they're developing cigarettes, I don't think it's possible in the biggest sense to be in service, to be supporting, you know, an organization whose toxicities are, you know, far outweigh the benefits, or perhaps have only local benefits. That's my view. There may be other people and other teachers who feel differently. But I would invite you to be aware, yeah, to kind of hold that koan of how am I being in service in the local way, but also how the organization which I'm working for is in service to the world. And if that inspires you to leave that position, I would say good on you. But that's just me. That's just my perspective.